Ms. Kenny, is there a quorum present?
Yes, there is.
All right. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. We have no review of policies this cycle. We do have revision of policies. So let me get going here. Is there a motion to approve sending policy 540, acceleration policy and procedures, to the school board?
Mr. Benty, if I may just add a note on this policy, Katie Rotbold is here. Her and myself, and then one of our school psychs worked last year on updating this policy. Basically, a lot of the language in there was very dated.
Okay.
And so the primary work we did was to update all of the language to reflect what we actually do today. I don't know if Katie has anything to add, but
So I'll take that as a motion.
I would make a motion
All right.
to approve, and that's the background.
Is
on
there
it.
a second? Second? All right. Now, discussion. So do you want to come up and discuss some of the pieces that was changed? It sounds like language was updated. I do see that there is a lot of red on this, so.
So most of this was, like Mr. Jern said, language updates with more current and also just consistency across. This is both the acceleration, so grade or subject acceleration policy, as well as the early entrance to kindergarten policy you'll see further down. So trying to bring some consistency to the process between both and just updating the process with our current assessments that are used, also making it flexible for assessments to change based on what's most appropriate at a given time. So some of it became a little bit more generalized, but for the purpose of allowing it to be the right assessment for a given situation.
Any discussion or questions for Mrs. Rotvold?
Yes, I have one or two. Would you define, it was on page, the pages aren't numbered, unfortunately. It's under step 3. It says demonstrate off-level standardized testing. What is off? Would you define off-level, please?
So that would be that it is comparing to the norms off of the grade level that the student is currently in. So the assessment itself would be consistent amongst all grade levels, like FastBridge. All grade levels take that same standardized assessment.
So there's a consistency.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. But as far as how we would look at the norms, if we're looking for accelerating to another grade level, we'd be looking at norms one grade level ahead of where they took the test. So they took the test as a 4th grader. We're comparing those norms to 5th grade if that's
Yes,
where they're requesting acceleration to.
And can I ask why on the first page application that they took the gifted and talented teacher off? Do we have a gifted and talented
Correct.
teacher?
We don't have a designated gifted and talented teacher at this point now.
Okay.
At the elementary level, it generally happens through our internal differentiation. So during win time, for example, students will go to an accelerated group type of thing, and that's how we're getting some of those services before this would be pursued. So this would be a higher level of that gifted and talented service.
Okay, and then also on the same, at the bottom of the first page, it says scores on grade level nationally recognized standardized tests. And you took out 95th percentile or above for math to demonstrate high achievement in math. How come it seemed like you're lowering the standard?
No, it was a little bit of a random inclusion there because it was only specific to math.
Yes.
Unclear why it was only
Yeah.
math. And the 95th percentile wasn't consistent with, let me find where we talk more about the percentiles.
So it was more for consistency, you're taking that out?
Yes, and we get more into the percentiles down in step 3, assessment and review,
Okay.
where we're looking at the 75th percentile, like 95th percentile was a little bit restrictive as to who we likely
Yeah.
would consider as a
Right.
good candidate for grade acceleration or subject acceleration. So this allowed us to be a little bit more inclusive of a lot of different information and not just looking at one cut score as you
Yeah.
made it or you didn't. So for example, in the cases that I've been in so far, the school psychologist and I would be in that screening section, that initial screening. So if, for example, the percentile performance was really not in the realm of something that would be considered for acceleration, let's say it was 35th percentile, we would not continue the rest of the process, but just saying that they had to be in the 95th percentile or were not going on, that wasn't real, that didn't fit with really what we would consider as a possibility. We can go into different percentiles.
And just a comment, I did like the fact that you added parents will be invited to a meeting to discuss the results. I think that's important
Yeah.
for parental. I did like that part. I would like to make an amendment to, on the first page here, under step 1 application, I think we should leave in permission for evaluation will be obtained from parents or a guardian. I would like to add that amendment.
So it does still have that, it's just reworded in the sentence before, that they will submit the letter describing the request and the signed consent for evaluation form. So we put that evaluation permission into the sentence before that.
Well, from what I'm reading, it's students/parents. It could be one or the other. Could we add students or that's why I would like to keep that in there.
But it says signed consent.
Pardon?
It says signed consent. I guess I was assuming that
And
was
signed
parents.
consent. Well, can a student do a signed consent?
The student can submit the letter describing the request. So, what was that?
I'm sorry. It said signed consent, but is who's signing the consent?
Right.
The parent has to?
Yes, the parent would have to. The student
this
would
one-
not.
Okay.
Unless they're
Right.
18.
Unless they're 18.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
at that point,
Yeah,
we're not
right.
doing acceleration.
So, but it would be, the signed consent would only be coming from a parent unless a student is 18 then,
guardian.
right?
Right.
Okay.
Really, the only thing that the students
All right.
would be submitting would be that letter. And in that initial application, it gives if the student is 5th grade or older, they can be the one to put in the letter of request and saying why they think that they.
But it still has to be signed by the parent.
It
unless
has to
the
be
student
signed by the
Is
parent.
under 18. That's what I
Yes,
wanted to make
yes,
sure. Okay,
yes.
thank you.
The application as well as the consent for evaluation.
Any further questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Is there a motion to approve sending policy 308, administrator and director evaluation, to the school board?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
I'll give that one to Ms. Fashion. All right, discussion. So this one pertains mostly to the position that I sit in as superintendent, overseeing the directors, which is mostly cabinet members and head principals of buildings. So this policy, the updated pieces in here was changing from shalls to may, and then also removing this form. So this form has not been used in quite a few years. I didn't even realize that this form existed. My time as principal, I never used this form. It was never sent to me. So moving this to better align with the practices that we do now. The practices that we do now, just to kind of be transparent, is that I meet with the people that I directly oversee, mostly cabinet members and principals. We set goals together. They have some choice in goals. I have some choice in goals. And then we meet about once every 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks, I think, to go over those. There's a mid-year review that is a written review that goes in their file. And then there's an end-of-year review. The end-of-year review has also been a written review, but we're going to be switching that this year to more of a rubric style, in which it will be located in Vector, which is our online housing piece, and then there will also be a written piece with that as well. So principals and cabinet members get a mid-year review and an end-of-year review every year that go in their files. So, any questions or discussion?
So there's a rubric that's under form. We won't be using that.
No. So basically, anything that's after the first 2 pages, we won't be using. That the principal's evaluation instrument, we won't be using. Any other questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Is there a motion to approve sending policy 416, drugs, alcohol, and cannabis testing to the school board?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second?
All right, thank you. Discussion. So you've seen, those of you that have been here, you've seen this come up a few different times, kind of as the language mainly gets fleshed out around cannabis. So you see the red pieces were added simply around cannabis testing. All right. And there was a question last time, I believe, and I'm trying to get to the page here. It was on page 416-14 that has to do with a testing laboratory. So we contract out our transportation. So therefore, we don't do testing of any drivers. And actually, the drivers are not Faribault Public School employees. They're employees of Faribault Transportation, and we contract for those services. So we needed to put in the language that you see in blue here, that is the testing laboratory for controlled substances, and we put used by Faribault Transportation as of August 28th of 2024, and then we put it in there. So that at least that is in there. And I believe then if you go to 416-19, there are some oral fluid tests for cannabis. Same thing on 416-20 and on 416-21. It goes into more explanation around the oral fluid testing. And I believe that is it. Yes. So, any further discussion or questions?
If there are additions to the legislative outcomes, as this has been brought back and forth,
Yeah.
we'll just continue to bring them back to the policy committee.
Yeah, I think my guess is that we're going to see this one tested multiple times, not even necessarily in the public school setting, but just in work settings in general. So I think you're going to see, some court cases in the next few years come out around, especially the testing part of this. So, and as those come out, those legal references and cross references will get updated by MSBA. Any further discussion?
Sorry, one more question.
Yep.
How many, do we review this on an annual basis, or is it 1 and 3 year?
So policies are reviewed once every 3 years or as they come up from MSBA if they have substantial changes or changes that need to be implemented sooner rather than later for us. Am I correct in saying that? Any other questions? You hit your allotment for the day, sorry. All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Is there a motion to approve sending policy 503, student attendance, to the school board?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, discussion. This one, I believe, was this one, did we bring this one here last time as well? And there was,
This one we tabled.
yeah. So this is the one that, if you remember correctly, our 503 and MSBA's 503 were fairly different from each other. So what had happened was when MSBA updated their 503, it was going to be a total overhaul for us. So what we did was we took our current 503 student attendance policy, we added in the pieces that need to be in there based off of legislation or MSBA updates, and added them into where they fit within our 503 policy. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's more tailored to what ours originally was. We did leave the notes in there, just so you know, so that you can understand what are the choices either by the school board, whether they can add or leave. So. Any questions or further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is on 503, page 3, up on top. It says, a parent, guardian, or other person having control of a child may apply to a school district to have the child excused from attendance for the whole or any part of the time school is in session during any school year. Who would be the other person?
So sometimes we have foster parents or people that have temporary custody or perhaps just educational rights over a student but are not considered guardians by law.
I guess I see this as a kind of an open door for someone just to come in and,
No,
that's the way I see it.
No, it's not at all that. It's still someone that has to, by either court documents or by permission from the parents or guardians, be able to have that permission. It's not just someone that we
So it would be,
allow.
like you said, court documents?
Court documents or permission from the parent or guardian to be able to have those educational
So it isn't
decision
just
making.
somebody at random? like
No,
that.
absolutely not.
You know,
No.
Somebody that's probably in the classroom or something, oh, I want to take this child out.
No, absolutely not.
It has to be court documents or the parent or the guardian.
Yeah, so it's either court issued.
Did we say that in there? Possibly?
Well, or it's under so it might be, if it's an aunt or an uncle, they might say, it might be a parent that says, I give so-and-so the right to call this child out of school.
Parent or guardian gives.
Parent or guardian
But the
gives.
parent or guardian would have to give written permission for this to happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Documented in Infinite Campus.
Possibly.
You think we should-
Documented in Infinite Campus.
And yes, those are documented in Infinite Campus, in our student information
So
system.
it is documented?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So anytime, just for clarification, anytime someone calls to excuse a student, they're asked, obviously, who the student is, the reason for the absence, they're asked who they are, and then that is cross-referenced in Infinite Campus to make sure it matches with what we have on file in there.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Mr. Jones can call up and say, I want to come pick up so-and-so's child for the day.
And the answer would be,
Unless it was,
yep, unless it was approved by them,
you can if you want.
by the parent or guardian, so.
Thank you.
Yep. Any further questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I believe now we are on to, nope, we're still on revisions.
Yeah, there's quite a, I think there's.
So-
Divisions.
Is there a motion to approve sending policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records, to the school board?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Nate. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, discussion.
Okay, I just have a question, 515 on page 14 at the bottom. 23, it said, when requested, educational agencies or institutions may share personal student contact information and directory information for students served in special education with post-secondary transition. Do you see that? You're reading it, Mr. Do I need
Yep,
the whole,
number
read the whole thing?
23.
I guess, what exactly does that mean? Can you just clarify a bit for me, please?
If I can ask.
If it's a special ed,
Yes, it could be the student is transitioning from the high school into the
Step-
18 to 21-year-old program.
Yep.
Looking at vocational
Yep.
employment opportunities. So it
Okay.
could,
that's what I
Read it.
thought it meant, but I just wanted to make sure, so, okay.
yeah.
All right.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Is there a motion to approve sending policy 532, use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds, to the school board? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. This policy is largely unchanged. Although there's a lot of red in it, it's largely unchanged, simply moving the terminology from police liaison officer to school resource officer to match with some more recent legislation. So,
May I just add, this is probably, because it's not within the revision, but what does a local law enforcement officers, or the law enforcement agencies, I think they are going along with this one, right? Well, yeah, it's really not a revision, so, I mean,
are you asking, like, do they support this?
yeah,
So basically what happens is that there, and my time as principal, I was involved in only a handful of these in all the years that I was in a principal or assistant principal. There comes a times, sometimes, when there's a student that is so dysregulated that law enforcement needs to step in
Yeah.
instead of school officials, and that's what this is about. So there always has to be that line that is maintained between what the school is doing and what the law is doing. So we always make sure that when we're doing our investigations, we're doing them separately. When law enforcement decides to step in to a student situation, school personnel step aside.
yes.
And likewise, when school personnel, or if school personnel are acting involved in the situation and ask for help, then you need to defer to the law enforcement when they get involved. So that's kind of what this is more about.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. And we are now on, I believe, yes. All right. Is there a motion to approve sending policy 616, school district system accountability, to the school board?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Wendy.
Second.
Tara, I'll give you the second there. All right, discussion.
I'm just going to mention here that just some of this policy, I think, and we've discussed this at the school board meetings, we need to, before I put my stamp of approval on something, I need to know what what some of the terms mean. So because of that, I'm not going to be pushing it forward. And this is really, I think, falls on the school board, not on the policy committee, so.
So I will say that the only changes that are in this is the state legislature has decided to change the world's best workforce title to comprehensive achievement and civic readiness.
So as long as we're working on revisions only,
Yeah, why that change was made, I don't know what that entails. I do not know.
it just said I get pushback sometimes. From
So-
like it's, well, this is revision, so I'll go along with that.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. That is it for the revisions. We will now look at a new policy. So is there a motion to approve sending new policy 606.5, library materials, to the school board?
We still get to talk about it, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
So yes,
All right. Yeah, it has to be motioned and seconded for us to discuss it.
Thank
So I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Nate. Discussion. So I will start, because I know this has kind of been a touchy one. So this policy is the same one that I believe came to this committee back in the spring. Did we bring this to this committee back in the
Yes,
spring?
we did.
And it went to the school board, and it was not voted in. However, it was brought up again this summer to look at again. So it was brought up in a meeting to look at. So the board chair had me look at it and said, bring it through policy committee, opened it up for people, for school board members to comment or put what they would like in it, or community members. I only received 2 emails, both of them from community members, both of them around the exact same concern that was around this. And that has actually been, excuse me, that has been put into place in here. So if you look through here, we have not, this is the model policy from MSBA. We have not made any changes to the model policy -1. The only one is on page, I gotta find it here, page 5, so 606.5-5. If you go down to the bottom where it says F, it says 2 student representatives. We added age 18 or older to be part of that committee. And then we still have the piece there that says as appropriate to the specific request.
I guess my question would be, I wasn't here for the spring one, I think I had conferences. But my question would be, how is this different from what's been happening prior years when it comes to what comes into our media centers? We know?
So this one is not around, are you talking around purchasing, or are you talking around?
Purchasing.
So this doesn't have anything
Has
to do with
nothing
purchasing.
that. This is
No.
just to get things off the
This
shelf.
is, yeah, so if you look at the form, which starts, it's the last 2 pages.
Yep, I have that too.
Yep. So the form is a request to remove or reconsider anything that is already on the shelf.
And have we had anything like this prior?
We have not, even though our policy has said we need to, we have not had anything in place to remove non-curriculum items from our schools.
Thank you.
And that's the piece to understand, that if you look at policy 606 is around curriculum, 606.5 is non-curriculum that is in the library.
Thank you.
I do have one question, and it is going back to F on page 606.5-5. Just, my question is, we put the age 18 or older. Wouldn't it, to get more of a representation, wouldn't being a senior or that grade level?
I think the concern was that many of these books that that may be brought up for reconsideration are due to sexual themes.
Okay,
So we want to make sure that, the word pornography has been used. So we
Okay.
want to make sure that if something is deemed as that, that we are making sure that the people that we would have look at it would be of age if it was deemed to be that.
Okay,
So we're just kind of trying to be a little bit cautious there.
thank you. Then that explains it. I didn't go there. That's not where I went.
So it says on page 606.5-3, under 5, library materials shall meet high standards of quality in one or more of these categories. Item G, readability. Obviously, a book targeted at elementary or middle school students being read by an 18-year-old or above. Is there a process in which we would eventually, and I'm not saying, it gets past one process where we deem it semi-appropriate, but how is an 18-year-old going to decide if the readability is readability? Or maybe that's cart in front of the horse.
I think that's where it says, if you go back to the previous piece, which was 606.5-5, where it says, as appropriate to the specific request.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a couple points here. The reason I think that we brought up this policy was because a community member came forth and read 3 books from our library that were very, I think the common person would just say, yes, this is porn. And the fact that we have it in our library, I think is rather embarrassing, and it kind of falls on the school board. I think what we need to do is really, when we're looking at these books, we have to set the parameters for sexually explicit material of the porn. I think we need to, and one of the first things talks about library materials shall meet high standards of quality. I've got a couple points there. And one of them, I'm kind of diverting now, in one or more. In one or more, really? I mean, that's not a high standard. To me, it's like, meet high standards of quality in one or more. So if only one of these, and I think that was a couple of the letters that we got, readability. In fact, I think somebody came up with a public forum and said, readability, that's the only, is the only standard that we're going to have. I do see these A through G. I think we have to pare down the list a bit, but I think the first thing that we should do is, I know there is, it's ratedbooks.com, and they do rate books, library books, and I think we should put that standard in there. And then maybe we can have some of these other things like artistic quality. I don't know, so much of this is subjective, like authenticity, what is that? I don't know if we even need that one. But critical thinking, educational significance, factual content. I think the first thing we should have is really that rating system, and I think Ms. Bedreau brought that up at the school board meeting. Rated books, I think it's ratedbooks.com, and I think we should put that standard in there first, and then we can look at some of these others. I think we should rate the book because they rate the book whether, for sexually explicit material. And I think we should go with that standard.
Who runs that site?
Yeah.
Because it's
Who
all
rates them?
based on perception. So
Well, all of this is based on perception.
Right, but that's what I mean, like, if we're choosing that site, I know, I talked to our media person, and he said they use Common Sense Media. There's a lot of different sites out there to check out books. So I would just be wondering which site is the right one.
I don't know if there's a lot
I don't
of,
know that we can necessarily.
Books like that. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of rated, because at one time, I think we said we didn't even have a site that rated books, but now we do. And I think we should really look into that.
And obviously, we'll do whatever the school board, what the will of the board is. I think if the board is going to go that direction, and I will say this at a board meeting as well, is that we will need to understand how we rate a book, or do we rate a book if it's not part of their rated section
Exactly.
already. So, I've been on that site and I've looked through, and they do a very nice job on that site.
That's rated,
Oh.
is that the one rated 1 to 5?
Yeah, they do a really nice job of rating them and then giving you, their view of the book. The issue is not even close to every book is on there. So I
Then
think,
can't we use some of this other criteria then?
yeah,
'Cause I
and
really think we should use that as our rated system, and I'm going to be pretty firm on that.
Well, I do think also, I'm sorry, we need to look at the intended audience, and if we want our students to read, we have to give them interest in what they want. So if someone is interested in farming, we want to have a robust agricultural center that they can choose from, which wouldn't be my cup of tea. So how could I say it's not my readability? I don't read schematics really well, but it might be someone else's. So that readability factor, I think, is important.
so I do believe with this policy, it has the potential to bounce back and forth between the board and this committee, perhaps a couple different times.
I have 2 more points.
Okay.
So I made my point about that. And I'm thinking, that I think that, I really think we should have a rating system to look at, but also we can look at these too. And that's where it's going to have to bounce back and forth again. Secondly, on page 6065-5, this is when they're picking out the committee to review the books. I looked at some of this stuff. This was in this was a court case, Miller versus California, 1973. And they did say that communities should decide what is obscene. And right now, when I'm looking at this, it's kind of lopsided with more administration than community. What I would like to see is like 3 community members, 2 parents, a principal, which would be administration too, a teacher, a media, 1 media, and a student with 18, with the caveat that they're 18 or over. That's what I'd like to see. And I don't know, maybe we can discuss this a little bit, because because of this court case, Miller versus California, and it was, they talked about this, communities decide what is obscene. And I think we need, right now, the way it is, there's so many administration, it's really not, I think we need more community members in there, including parents.
Well, I see 2 administrators, I see 2 teachers, a library media specialist, 2 members of the community, and 2 student representatives, if appropriate.
So if you look at that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 administration, and the rest, the 4, that's what I'm saying, it's a little bit lopsided. I think
Are
it
you
should be more
calling-
community members.
Are you calling the teachers administration?
No, I'm just saying, well, from the district is what I should have said. I'm sorry, thank you for clarifying that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
From the district, I think it should be more community members than
So you
people
would
in
like
the
to see it
district.
equal?
Well, I'm not sure if I'd like to see it equal. I think it should be part of the community, and I think it should
But-
be 5 to 4.
Aren't we part of the
Part of the
community?
community. Well,
I mean,
I don't know.
I've been born and raised in
Yes.
this community. I would feel that I would be part of the
Well,
community.
I think it needs to be somebody from the community that's not associated with the district. Maybe I should put it that way. And I really think that.
But we do have groups out in the community that are very strongly one way or strongly another way, so I don't know how it would be easily able to make that fair against the whole community either. I mean, that's a big piece to look at.
And the other thing I'm going to just mention, 606.5-6, it said you have to examine the specific library material as a whole. I guess, why would we have to do that? My question. And then I've got, do we have to do it as a whole? I know, I believe with the movie industry, if there is a 2-minute sex scene in there, and the movie is probably rated R then, to alert the parents. So, because they talk about the fact that the movie industry does that, I don't think we'd have to read the whole book. The books that Mary Hackett brought up, and she read that was pure porn. And I don't think anything like that should be in the library.
So Linda, could you repeat the name of that book?
Um,
We didn't hear it.
There was 3 of them that she brought up. What was it? I can email those to you. Offhand, I can't think of their.
No, I thought
But
you
I
just
can-
mentioned it now. That's why I
Yeah,
couldn't
there
hear
was
you.
three books that she brought up, and there's more than that.
And I do remember the one meeting where one was brought up, and it was said that it was at Roosevelt, and I've been at Roosevelt for a long time.
No, it wasn't that one that she
Oh,
brought up.
I was gonna say, because we looked into one of them, and one
Yes.
was taken off the shelf before it was even put
Yes.
on the shelf for
No,
kids.
this was 3, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the names of the 3 books. I've got the information down there. Mary Hackett is the one that brought this up,
Okay.
and she actually read this, and maybe I should send that out to the people. I don't want to say it, but it was really graphic. Talking about oral, anal, teenagers doing this with each other, and it was it's really pretty hot and sexy, and very. They didn't mince words.
Okay, so
And I think this would be considered porn. So I'm sorry. I really was shocked by that, and the fact that it got in our schools in the first place. It was an embarrassment for me as a school board member, and I don't think we should have those type of books in our library.
So I definitely hear what you're saying, and I agree with many of the points. I mean, they were very graphic. It would be my preference to not take it out of context and read the whole book.
So you think that part in the book, like if there's, she had quite a bit, maybe the F word, how many times or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, again,
You're
that's
expressing your opinion.
That's my opinion. I mean, I think, you've said it on many of these policies, how obviously as a school board member, I review the whole policy, specifically when it relates to just revisions, but I also read the whole policy because I enjoy reading. I would prefer to make a decision on a book or a policy based on the whole policy and not just one piece of context, if you will. That would be my preference.
That's your preference? I guess
Um,
the thing I would say, I think the whole part of it really muddies the water, so to speak, because the issue is how to set parameters for sexually explicit material. If you've got a paragraph that's really bad in there, really, and most of these books that she read, I think the context was really graphic throughout. But so that's we can disagree.
Yeah, we can totally disagree, and I appreciate and hear your opinion. I guess that, again, is my opinion and preference would be to read the context material, graphic. I mean, we're establishing the parameters of the selection committee. They're all above the age of 18. I would prefer to read the whole book and make a decision on readability and all of the other standards that this committee and then ultimately the school board decides to base their parameters around.
Any further discussion?
I'm just wondering, like, in here, it doesn't talk about, like, what would want me to reconsider a book. I mean, yes, if it's, the sexual part of it, I get that. But are there other reasons? Like, we've got states that are banning books like crazy because they're talking about different things. Like, are we opening this to any reason we want to ban a book, or is there something I missed?
Well, so my understanding is if you follow, and I want to make sure I look at this right, is that the form is
I
submitted,
looked at that, yeah.
okay?
Yep.
And then I believe it does need to it needs to be chosen for reconsideration.
Okay.
All right, it's not just an automatic reconsideration.
Okay, thank you.
Because other districts have had this come in where they've used the form and they received, 200 forms submitted, and they're like, that's great, but we can do 6 per year. Because it takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to do one of these. And they are expensive. But so, they look more at what are the ones that truly need to be reconsidered, and then those are the ones that they focus on first.
Thank you.
And the selection committee that whoever we would establish, they would get the stack of complaints, if you will, and
So the way that this would work is, the way that it's drawn up here, is that my designee would be the director of teaching and learning, right?
Okay.
So that way, that person runs that committee, and then if there's, once that decision is made, if there's an appeal, then the appeal either comes to me or it comes to the school board. And that would also be something that we would have to decide. What I was going to say earlier was, I truly value this committee, but with a hot policy like this, I do believe that a lot of the fine details that Dr. Moore is asking about definitely are going to have to be fleshed out. We're going to have to figure those pieces out. I don't believe that will happen at this committee level. I believe it will happen at the board level. Okay, so I guess what I'm asking this committee for is more, we send this policy to the board saying, with the caveat that we understand that you're going to want to make changes to this, and allow them to work on it, or if they choose to send it back to us to work on specific parts of it. Does that sound fair to everyone?
at the end of the day, I mean, I want the community to be happy with the process that we outlined, and if this is the will of the board, if you will, to have this policy, that's our law. So I want to make sure that it's well thought out and works for me and Dr. Moore and members of our community. So I think, yeah, definitely there needs to be some wiggle room, but you guys are educators, not me, so.
And I guess that's my biggest concern, like, as a teacher, as a parent, as a community member, like, I totally agree with some books needing to be, I don't want it in my kids' hands, I get that. I just don't want it to turn into, we're banning this for this, and we're banning this for this, and all of a sudden, books are banned everywhere. You know what I mean? That freedom to read what you want and that kind of thing, I just want to make sure that that's not taken away.
Mr. Chair, I just want to mention, I think the reason this even came up was because of those couple books, well, it was 3 books that she brought up, and what she read, the passages are really bad. And so I think that's what we're really, that does not belong in a public school library.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, if because I don't like it the way it is, so we're just sending it to the board with the, like you said, the caveat that we have to make the changes at the board
Yeah,
level.
so, Ms. Kenny, I think what we would do is we would send it to the board. If this group votes to send it to the board, we would send it to the board with kind of the notes or caveat that we understand that they're going to want to make changes and look at this. And I think it's gonna be, it'll either bounce back and forth between the board and this committee, or it will spend multiple meetings at the board level flushing everything out. So if we approved it tonight, then the first reading for it would be September 23rd at the board level. And that's where amendments and discussion could come in. But understand that moving at that level, then amendments will have to come to make the changes that people want to make. Unless the chair puts it on there as a discussion item, but if it comes from this group it would probably be as a first reading. So if we're looking, if board members are looking to make changes, then they need to bring amendments for that there, if that makes
You mean
sense.
at the reading?
At the first reading, yes.
At the first reading.
Yeah, I know the board does not like to wait until the second reading to get amendments.
Yeah.
So,
Can I just offer a suggestion? I mean, is it a possibility to have a joint meeting of the board and the policy committee at some point to just hammer it out for these?
we could, that would have to be a public meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The special session.
So, I mean, if the board or the clerk can call a special session, I cannot. So if that's brought up by the board and the chair, the chair or the clerk can call a special session, I cannot. So if one of them could call a special session around doing that, and then they can dictate who they want to be there. So.
I mean, I would defer to everybody else on the policy if that's something that would work or be of interest.
So just for clarification, so it would be all the board members and all the policy committee then for a meeting?
If that's what the chair,
Because I just didn't know if it was, because you said it would be a regular, like a special meeting. Because I know if we have 4, that's open meeting law, we have to,
Well,
so this
but
would be
then-
every.
but even-
Permission of the board. would be
All
a
the board
problem.
members.
yeah, even then, it would still be a meeting that either the chair or the clerk would have to call.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Correct.
Believe it or not, my power is limited. Is there any further discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of sending 606.5 library materials to the school board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. So motion passes, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 1. Okay? All right. Next meeting is October 1st, 2024, 3:45 here in the Falcon Room. It will also be streamed on YouTube. There are no more items to discuss. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All right, I'll give that to Tara, and I'll give you the second, Natalie. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.